for the first question, 1A here. This is actually from the set 43 May June 2020. So calculate the fees charged today. All you need to do is to take 54 multiply with 15 and 18 multiply with 25. So you should get 1,260. And for B here, keyword here is decrease. So the original is the unknown that we're looking for, which is August. Multiply with 100% minus 4.5%. It will be 37,054. So 37,054 divided by 95.5, you should get 38,800 as your final answer. As for C number 1, we have man, woman compared to woman and child. So for this, this is the harder type of ratio question. You have to find for the one that was overlapping here is actually woman. Find their common multiple here. It will actually be 12. So for 4 to become 12, you have to multiply the sets at the top with 3. So for the man, it will be 5 times 3 equals to 15. And for the children, for 3 to become 12, you have to multiply everything by 4 for the respective group. So for the children, 7 times 4, you will get 28. So calculate the ratio, it will be 15, 12, and 28 as your final answer. As for part 2, today there are 224 children in the campsite. Find the total numbers of men and women. So the total ratio here is by taking 15 plus 12 plus 28. You should get 55. And for total visitor, it will be multiplied with 28 over 55 equals to 224. With the total visitor, I just have to minus it with 224. Then I can find the total numbers of men and women. So for you to find the total visitor, all you need to do is to take 224 divided by 28 over 55. You should get your final answer at 440. So 440 minus 224, your final answer will be 216. As for part D, the space allowed for each tent is a rectangular shape measured by 8 meters by 6 meter, corrected to the nearest meter. So the rounding value here is hidden in corrected to nearest meter. So nearest meter means 1 meter and then divided by 2. So you have plus minus 0.5. And for you to find the upper bound of the area, so you have to take each of the sides, add it with half, then you multiply them up. You should be able to get your final answer as 221 over 4. For that, correct to 3 significant figures, you should get your answer easily. As for part E, the value of the campsite has increased exponentially by 1.5% every year since its open of 30 years. Calculate the value of campsite as a percentage of its value 30 years ago. So just take 100% multiplied by 1.5% to the power of 30. You should get 156.31% as your final answer. Or if you were to write it as 3 significant figures, it should be 156. So for question 2 here, draw the image of triangle A after a reflection in a line y equals to negative x. So for that, I label it as A with a dot there. Then for the translation question, you'll be shifting it to the left hand side by 2 and downwards by 9. So for that question over there, it will be the one I labeled as A double dot. So for triangle A to B, it is the enlargement from the point where I join all the corners up. It's actually negative 7, 8 with a scale factor of 1 over 2 because it was being shrunken. For part 2, triangle A to C, on the other hand, this will be a rotation of 90 degree clockwise from the point of origin. As for part 3, number 1, okay, drawing it out. Key information here is that the largest is 174 and then the range. So when you take 174 minus by 69, you get the minimum as 105. Median will be this line that I drew in the center of the box, which is 148. Lower quartile is 121 and the interquartile range is 38. So from your lower quartile, when you add it with 38, you get 159. So through that, you should be able to construct this box and whisker diagram here. However, you notice that I drew it with my ball pen. Please do not follow my illustration, because whenever it comes to graph, please remember to use pencil. Okay, the reason why I use ball pen here is just for illustration purposes, because when I took the photo, okay, if I were to use pencil, it might not be as clear as I'm writing in ball pen. So please take note on this. As for you to calculate the mean, all you need to do is to multiply the frequency with the marks and then divide by the total marks here. Okay, the total marks is for you to calculate from the frequency, because it represents the total amount of students there. So 8 plus 2 plus 12 plus 2 plus 0 plus 1, that will be your denominator, which is 25. So after the calculation, you will get 6.48 as your final answer. As for question 4, this is actually inequalities question. All I did was to shift the 3m minus 8m less than equals to negative 5 minus 12. So through this, you will get negative 5m less than equals to negative 17. 5m more than equals to 17. So m will be more than equals to 17 over 5. So if you were to write it in a mixed number, it will also be accepted. For part B, all you need to do is to cross multiply them. Then you get your final results as negative 0.75. Question 7, also pretty straightforward. This is just a simultaneous equation. So all the details of the workings has been listed down. Please refer to it and you should be able to get the same answer as mine. So if you struggle with the factorization process, feel free to watch the algebra video that I make in my revision guide. So over there, I explain how to factorize a quadratic equation effectively. For question 5, find the shape of this area. Okay, so things to take note was AB's total length is 2x and DC is x plus 3. So which means when I take 2x minus bracket x plus 3, you should get the balance as x minus 3 for the small rectangle at the top. So through that, you will know that x plus 1 multiplied with x minus 3 added with 4x minus 5 multiplied with x plus 3, and it will be equals to 342. So after the calculation, you get 5x squared plus 5x minus 360. However, this is not the final form that they wanted, because they wanted x squared only. So I will be dividing 5 from all of the variables inside. You will get x squared plus x minus 72, which fulfill the requirement. So part B is just factorized, similar to what we did in our simultaneous equation. So x final value would be negative 9 and 8. As for part C here, so from the information that we gotten, x can either be -9 or 8. Please take note that for length there's no negative, so -5 is not accepted. You need to substitute all the 8 information to calculate your parameters. So over the graph over there, I listed down all the details workings, and your parameter will be 86. As for part D, okay, we'll be identifying BDC's angle. Okay, we'll be identifying angle DBC. So I illustrated out a triangle over there that have B, that have D and C. So the opposite of it will be 11 and BC will be 27. So tangent of DBC equals to DC over BC. So tangent inverse 11 over 27, you get 22.2. So for question 6 here, for us to calculate the value of x, I'll be using cosine rule, because GB square equals to GC square plus BC square minus 2 multiplied with GC multiplied with BC cosine GCB. So you don't actually have to follow all my workings here. You can use the shortcut, but I just memorize one formula. So every time when I do this, I just repeat the steps. Okay, so I don't have to memorize additional cosine rule formula. So after the shifting and calculation, you get it as 29.5. So to calculate ACs, we'll be using the triangle. So since we've gotten x value, the ACB's angle will be 54 plus 29.5, which is 83.5. And for the last angle over there, just take 180 minus 42 minus 83.5. It should be 54.5 for angle ABC. So when you run the cosine rule formula, you should get the unknown, which is AC they're looking for, as 30.4. As for part B here, calculating water that flow through in 1 hour. Please take note that for 1 hour, there's 60 minutes and a total of 3,600 seconds. So I calculate the area first by taking 2.5 centimeters multiplied with 15. And then from this, I multiply another 3,600 into it, as well as 20 cm per second, which is the speed of the water flow. Through this, you actually get 2,700,000 cm cube. So this 2,700,000 cm cube, after divided by 1,000, okay, you can convert cm cube into liters, which is 2,700 liters for this final answer here. As for question 7, okay, Arun's play football is 3/4, which means the probability that he doesn't play will be 1 minus 3/4, which is 1/4. For Bob, for him to play will be 2/5, and for him not to play will be 1 minus 2/5, which is 3/5. So calculate the probability. One Saturday, Arun and Bob both play football. So 3/4 times 2/5, it will be 3/10, which is 0.3. So calculate the probability that Saturday either Arun play or Bob play, but not both. So you have two scenarios here, where one is Arun play and Bob doesn't, and the other one will be Arun doesn't and Bob play. So add these two scenarios up, you should get 11/20, and that will be your final answer. As for part B, it's slightly tricky because limited information was given. Calculate the probability that Bob play football for 2 of the next 3 Saturdays. So you have 3 types of arrangement, which is play 2 games in 2 Saturdays in a row, followed by 1 that doesn't, as well as doesn't play on the first week and play twice for the following week, and also a mixture, play 1 week, rest 1 week, and play again. So adding all these 3 scenario results up, it will be 36 over 125, and that will be your final answer. So Arun play a football, the probability that he score will be 1 over 7. Calculate the probability that Arun score the winning goal on one Saturday. So let's say he have to play and he have to score, it will be 3 over 4 times 1 over 7, which is 3 over 28. For question number 8 here, okay, they are looking for an interior angle of a regular polygon. N side is 150, which means this 150 here is after splitting it equally among the amount of sides. So the formula, instead of the usual 180 times n minus 2, you have to divide this by n as well, and it will equals to 150. So after the calculation, you get your n's results as 12. As for part B here, okay, first thing that I do there was to illustrate out the right angle triangle. It will be from KM, which is the diameter, it will form a 90 degree at L. So since the center is L, okay, which is 90 degree, you know the balance is also 90, and it was being split equally among the angle LMK and MKL, which both is 45. So for your Z value, because from the center, when you join out with a tangent line KS, it will form a 90 degree. So 90 minus 45, you get 45. Alternatively, your angle SKL will actually be equivalent to KML. So you can just write the answer as 45 right away if you know how to use the alternate segment theorem. So part number 2, okay, things to take note here was that alternate segment theorem was being used. You transfer the 58 degree to where I label it there. Then you can find the total area of a triangle. Total interior angle of a triangle is 180. 180 minus 58 minus 27, you get a balance of 95. So because the straight line was being formed over there, 180 minus 95, you get the balance of 85 as your angle X. As for part 3, pretty straightforward. All you need to do is to find the straight line first from GFE. You know that the balance of GFJ is actually 180 minus 108. You get it as 72. And since cyclic quadrilateral, H plus F, it will be 180. So your balance there will be 108. So very similar to your paper 41, same concept was being used. If you were to extend your GH line by a little bit, you know that your Y will be transferred to JH and the line you extended. So it will form a straight line where Y plus 108 will be equal to 180. So your Y's final answer will be 72. And for part C, give the reason why they are congruent to each other. So first thing first, all of the sides is the same, where it goes by OC, OD, OA, OB, all of them is the same radius. So the length will be the same. So since it is the same, it obviously forms a isosceles triangle. And DC distance and AB is the chord, and they have the same length because of the ON and OM being the same size. So all 3 sides of the angle, okay, all 3 sides of the triangle, we have the same degree and also same distance. Hence, they are congruent to each other. Question 9a is regarding your lines assessment. So as per usual, arrange it in the y equals to mx plus c format. You should be able to get your gradient as 3 over 8. And for part 2, finding when it passes through y-axis, this is when x equals to 0. So when you substitute x equals to 0 into everything, you get your y's value as 5 over 2. So the coordinates goes by 0, 5 over 2. Part B, number 1, calculating the length of PQ. This one we will be using the length formula. So you get it as 2 square root 61, which is 15.6. Okay, find the equation that line parallels to PQ passes through the point 6, negative 1. So keyword here is parallel. So all you need to do is to identify PQ's gradient. Okay, then transfer it over to y equals to negative 5 over 6x plus c. To find the c, you need to substitute the point that they touches, which is 6, negative 1, into the respective place. You get c's value as 4. So your final answer for this will be y equals to negative 5 over 6x plus 4. And for the last one, since they say the perpendicular bisector, you have to do two things. One is to identify the gradient of the perpendicular line. Secondly, you have to find the midpoint of PQ. So midpoint calculation is very straightforward. I attached it at the left hand corner already. And the things I wanted to point out was that point of the gradient. So perpendicular gradient multiplied with the original gradient given to you, which is the negative 5 over 6 that we identified earlier. When they're being multiplied to each other, you will get negative 1. So your unknown here will be negative 1 divided by negative 5 over 6. You should get 6 over 5 as your final answer. So y equals to 6 over 5x plus c. So when you substitute the point of your midpoint there, which is 3, 3 into the respective space, you get your c as negative 3 over 5. So your entire equation will goes by y equals to 6 over 5x minus 3 over 5. Question 10a, write down each function here. So for the part 1, I used the y-intercept and x-intercept to find the gradient. I noticed it was 1. So y equals to 1x plus c. By substituting the c, which is the y-intercept, you get your results as function fx equals to x plus 5. As for the next one, immediately you must know it is actually a sine graph. However, the amplitude was being adjusted. So the top, okay, the peak and the trough are now at 2 and negative 2, which means the amplitude is now 2. So the final answer for this function fx here will be 2 sine x. Part B, the basic version of the graphing quadratic, drawing a tangent line. After you sketch it out, okay, I utilize the point P, which is 2.7, and then the additional coordinates that I identified from the line I drew. So in my case, it intersects with the point of origin, which is 0, 0, and through the calculation, I get my gradient as 1.35. As for question 11 here, finding function g bracket 6. So when your x is 6 now, substitute it in 2 times 6 over 6 minus 3, you will get 12 over 3. And this answer here will get you 4. For part B, as per usual, solve from the inner part. So find g bracket 4 first, substitute the 4 into x position, you get it as 8. Then substitute this 8 into your function f x position. You get 7 times 8 minus 4, which is 52. Part C here, substitute the function hx into the brackets. You get f bracket x squared. So this x squared now is your new x. So you have 7x squared minus 4. As for part D, substitute function fx and gx into it, then try to make them in the same denominator. So for the 7x minus 4, if we multiply with x minus 3, and for 2x, if we multiply with 2. After the expansion, please remember, do not go and adjust the denominator, just leave it as it is. You will get 7x squared minus 21x plus 12 over 2 bracket x minus 3 as your final answer. Part E, your x is now being changed into x plus 2, so 7 bracket x plus 2 bracket negative 4 equals to negative 11. After the adjustment, you get your x results as negative 3. As for part F, if your x is now being p, so p to the power of 2 equals to p. So for this to be valid, you only have two options. One is when your p is 1, 1 being squared is still 1, or 0 being squared is still 0. So your p can be 1 or 0. Question 12 here, okay, find the two stationary point. So I took out the 3 multiplied with 4. Then for the power section, original that there was 3, it was being minus by 1. Repeat the steps for the remaining variables. Key things to take note was that I changed the 3, okay, the integer into 3 times x to the power of 0. Okay, this is just to support your understanding. Okay, you're not necessarily follow me. You can just write whatever that I illustrated using the blue pen. The red pen is the workings that I wanted to show you what went through the process in order to get to 12x squared minus 3. So for you to find the stationary point means that dy dx must be 0. So 12x squared minus 3 equals to 0. Your x squared will be 1 over 4. After square root it would be plus minus 1 over 2. So when your x is positive 1 over 2, you will get your y as 2. When your x is negative 1 over 2, you will get your y as 4. So this will be the two coordinates that you should get. And for you to find the stationary point, whether it's maximum or minimum, all you need to do is to substitute your x as 1 over 2 and negative 1 over 2 into it. You get your d2y dx2 as 12 and d2y dx2 as negative 12. So please take note of this. When your d2y dx2, which is your second derivative, when it is positive, means it is local minimum. And when it is negative, means it is the local maximum. So you can identify this through two ways. If you don't want to follow the second derivative, you have to illustrate the graph out like what I did at the bottom part. Okay, so both is accepted. Personally, I prefer drawing it out. Okay, but some of you couldn't sketch it effectively. Just stick to second derivative method and you should be able to get the answer. For the last question here, B. So the curve has already been illustrated for you. All you need to do is to draw out the additional line. This is actually the graphing quadratic question where you have to arrange, okay, and compare the x squared minus x plus 1 with the x squared minus 2x minus 2 over here. So to make it back into the original form, I will have to split the negative 2x into negative x, and negative 2 I have to add it by 3. So when you add it by 3, on the other side of your equal, you have to add it by 3 as well. So only when you plus or minus integer, this will happen. Okay, so I bring away the negative x that I split it out. You know that now you have the original equation of x squared minus x plus 1 and also another x plus 3 there. So when your x is 0, your y will be 3. When your y is 0, your x will be negative 3. So through this, you draw out the line and you find the interception, which is negative 0.75 and 2.75. So overall, the syllabus has been changed drastically, especially for graphing quadratic question. They didn't spam it in one question anymore. Instead of it, they splitted all the topics out and then combined with the newly added stuff. So if you have friends that are struggling to understand this paper, feel free to share this review video to them. and I wish you all the best in your upcoming examination. Thank you.